Hey there, welcome to the QB Show. My name is Stacy Kildall, and my co-hosts are Woody Adams and Dawn Brolin. We want to ask you guys to take a couple minutes to visit each one of our sponsors and check them out. They've been helping us bring the show to you for the last 4 years. We have Avalara.com, making sales tax less taxing. They will calculate and pay your sales tax liability and take care of all of your returns as well. We have tsheets.com. This is probably the #1 employee-rated time tracking application on the planet, if not the galaxy, and an amazing team of people behind it. We have Skyline Hosting by UniDataIT.com. This is where we host all of our QuickBooks software as well as our other software like Microsoft Office. So please take a minute and visit them, and I hope you enjoy our show.
Well, okay. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties, a little 5 minutes late. That's what happens when you leave me in charge. I am also going to invite a special guest tonight, and I want to say hello to everybody. I did miss everybody last week while I was away on vacation, which was really awesome. Anyway, it's so great. Technology is awesome, except when it doesn't work, which for me is lovely. Okay, hey everybody. So this is the QB show, and I know some people on this call or on this Google Hangout are out at the Sleater conference, which is way cool. And I'm going to bring on a special guest in just a minute, if you don't mind just hanging on with me a couple minutes more. I know that, man, technology's tough. You know what? I did a lot of recording today, so I'm a little loony. Sending. Okay, cool. Let's hope this works. That would be great. Anywho. So, sent link. Cool. Anyway, hello everybody, and we're here to have a show about QuickBooks, and of course I'm all decked out with my Team Rollin' T-sheets, hat, T-shirt, and necklace, which makes me a total more of a nerd than I was before. But thank you so much for joining us here today. We will have a special guest, so you won't just have to listen to me the entire time. But the last 10 days I've been on vacation with the family, which was awesome. So last Tuesday I was not in or on the show because I was out relaxing in the sun. I have a little bit of a sunburn from what I can see from my screen, but anyway, lots of good stuff happening, a lot of amazing things happening out at the Sleater conference, and very excited about that. I wish I was there, of course. Oh, Joseph, my friend. I think I'm on mute. No, I'm not. Are you on mute, Joe? I can't hear you. Let me just make sure I don't have you on mute, because that would be bad. So Joe, of course, is this is my special guest. My special guest is Joe. Joe, can you hear me? Shake your head if you can hear me. You know what? This is actually, it'd be more fun for Joe to be muted and me to be able to talk so that I can say things and we just make him kind of move, right? No, it wouldn't be that much fun.
Yeah, good try. I think you can hear me now.
He figured it out. Joe, how are you? Thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. They don't really let me launch the show very often on my own, and obviously for good reason. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight to co-host with me, the one and only, might I add, Joseph, as I like to call him. You all call him Joe. I call him Joseph. Joe Woodard. And I appreciate you coming on. And there's so many things going on, and we've had a few texts today and talked a little bit about, through our text, what's happening with you. And you're doing some amazing things, and I want to hear all about it. And let's have some. We're just going to have a conversation tonight about that.
I would absolutely love to do that, Dawn. And one of the things I'm most excited about, we just launched our first ever course in something called the National Advisor Network Institute. Now, for those who are watching the show tonight and they've never heard of the National Advisor Network, it's the nation's largest independent network of certified QuickBooks Pro advisors on the planet. And we have had this network for 4 years now, but we saw a need among the members of the National Advisor Network and pro advisors in general to take their practices to the next level. You hear that a lot, take your practice to the next level. It's almost become cliche. So let me drill down very specifically what I mean by that. There is coming a paradigm shift in our industry where, and it's not going to happen overnight, this isn't a skies falling thing, but eventually and gradually, data entry is going to be replaced by automation. And not entirely replaced, but replaced significantly enough that if the pro advisors who make their living off of the management of data, I call it trading keystrokes for dollars, if those people don't make a shift in a different direction and they don't retire soon enough on top of that, they're going to find themselves with a classic cheese move situation and they won't have anywhere to go. So for 2 reasons, I am passionate about getting pro advisors equipped to become trusted advisors. Now, the word advisor is in our name, but the vast majority, unfortunately, of pro advisors are focused on 2 things, Dawn. They're focused on history or they're focused on compliance. Okay? Historians, meaning bookkeepers who capture the history, compliance, meaning people who, and these are noble tasks. I mean, you do a tremendous number of tax returns. That's a compliance job. Without people like us doing that in the industry, the whole world would fall apart. I get that. But is that all we should do, right? Should it just be historians? Should it just be compliance? Or should we expand beyond that into what people are coining trusted advisory services? People like Edie Osborne, Craig LaFollette, Gary Boomer, Darren Root, Doug Sleater, we've all been saying this is the future of the industry. The big difference between this being a proactive thing is, where we embrace it just because of the nobility of its purpose. The big difference is now we're going to be forced to embrace it or find a new occupation because of this data automation piece. It's going to push people toward it. The problem is many pro advisors, I mean, you're a CPA, right? A lot of pro advisors are not CPAs. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an MBA, right? Everything I have, everything I know about contributing to small business success, I have learned through a single educational institution. It's a pop tuition called the School of Hard Knocks. Okay, it's not to be underrated, right? So, and I've learned how over the course of the last almost 20 years working with small business owners, I've learned how to cut through all the detail and all the drudgery and the mundane stuff and to contribute to the success of my clients so that they look to me as if I'm an MBA, as if I'm somebody that, a CFO, somebody that that they engage to begin with in order to play this kind of a coaching role because I earned my way into that position. I begin to earn that trust. So this is the analogy I use. I believe that there are a lot of pro advisors in the candy striper status within the hospital, right? Brand new to the industry, key punching, sitting in the back office someplace, working their way up a very slow ladder to do other things. Then there are people, there are nurses that I would put in the LPN category, and I know all about the nursing industry because my sister-in-law is one. Then LPNs are the nurses that aren't RNs, okay, but they practice as nurses, they're functional nurses, they have a certain amount of nursing school, but they're not RNs. And the next level is an RN. Then you have this thing called a nurse practitioner, which for all purposes is a doctor. They can prescribe medicine. They can even do very, very minor outpatient procedures and things like that. They're for all practical purposes a doctor. And then you have your doctor, right? Well, there's something that's plaguing the accounting industry that the medical industry figured out, that the Army figured out. You don't have to be an officer in order to be, in leadership. You don't have to be a doctor in order to be a nurse practitioner. All right, you don't have to have the official title in order to make a significant difference in your occupation. So so this is the goal of NAN Institute. You can see I'm very passionate about it. The goal of NAN Institute is to turn candy stripers into LPNs, LPNs into RNs into nurse practitioners, so that the nurse practitioners are playing right alongside the doctors like you, the CPAs like you, and functionally we're all contributing to small business health, okay? And in a very respectful capacity, okay? Now, in a respected capacity, respected role. Now, this is no light task, and a lot of people have undertaken it with various degrees of success. There's some really good coaches out there. But as I observed the entire landscape, I saw a lot of people saying we can get small business advisors to where they need to be in 6 months. I don't believe that's possible. Or we can get small business advisors to where they need to be in a year. I don't think it's possible. I believe to get a small business, now you can start doing some of the roles, so I can get to wait, but to get a small business advisor truly to this nurse practitioner level, or even, there's some quote unquote doctors that have been living so in a world of compliance and history that they refresher too. And we've got some CPAs in NAN Institute that are going, okay, well, help me get my head out of this compliance I've been in for the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. There's a 75-year-old member of NAN Institute who says, I'm setting a new vision for my practice. You go get it, girl, right? And so, and she's a CPA, and these people are going, help me to refocus on why I got into this thing to begin with, and that is to help my clients to be successful as business owners. And so we've got this core group of 23 people. The classes are extremely controlled in size, highly interactive. We're sharing webcams, sharing information back and forth, interacting with each other, sharing experiences, learning from each other. I call it Pro Advisor Anonymous, right? All this stuff that we're doing, right? And I say that very respectfully because it's an incredible program. And so it's not a webinar. It's really just this group of people getting together and sharing their experiences. And there's a lot of teaching first course. Get this, in 4.5 weeks, this team is completely rewriting all their profiles. They're challenged to, but not required to, redesign their websites with tools that we've given them. They are doing new exercises with clients. They are reading 4 books. They are writing a publishable article for Intuitive Accountant, which we're going to start publishing their articles through an editorial process over the coming weeks. These people are busy.
Right.
Busy, and this is just the first course. We're in conversation with national, international sales trainers to help with sales skills. We're in conversations with people, and I'm not going to name them in case it doesn't work out, but very, very highly respected business coaches with 20 years of experience or more, all creating this community of people that are saying, I am going to make a difference. Now, we're all collected around a common vision. To say, take my practice to the next level is too open and it's too vague. So this is the vision statement of the Woodard organization, to radically and positively impact the way small businesses operate through the advisors of small business. Now, our purpose statement is a drill down of that. We empower pro advisors. And the reason you're hearing all this excitement in my voice is in Scaling New Heights, we've empowered them. In National Advisor Network, we've empowered them. Never so acutely and intentionally have we ever, in such a concentrated way, empowered a group of advisors in the history of our company. And they're getting it. They're saying things like incredible. They're saying things like inspirational. They're saying things like just simply wow. After the first one, there was just somebody that just typed wow in the chat message. And so I'm invigorated now. I'm saying, okay, this thing has teeth. This first test case is working. We're partnering with the right people. And we are going to, and then I'm flying up to Mountain View. I'm going to have some conversations with Intuit to share our success, see if there are ways we can partner there. But if there are 100,000 pro advisors, my question of the community and my question of Intuit is, what difference are those 100,000 pro advisors making to, and here's Intuit's vision statement, to simplify the business of life, to create an operating system for small business? How aligned are they with this very, very noble goal that Intuit has to affect the small business world for the better? And my thinking is not aligned enough. So let's work on that. Yeah.
So interesting, a couple things that you've said that kind of strike chords with me. One, of course, is reading books. So I think it's interesting that you said that about reading books.
Right.
Because there are so many, and they're not accounting, debit, credit books. They're not necessarily
they're not technical books at all.
Right, they're not technician books at all. They're books about how to maybe run an operation, or how to, how to detect fraud, like Frank Abagnale's book. Like I can't.
Right, that's a fantastic book. Yeah.
Are you kidding? It's like, it should be attached to someone's body who's, fired up about that kind of thing. So I find it interesting that you say that about books. So just give me, let's just say Joe's top 3 books, and they don't have to be top 3. They can just be like the 3 off the top of your head that you would recommend to people to read. And then I have another thing to follow up about what you just said.
I'm going to answer that question in 2 ways. I'm going to say the course curriculum for this first course in Nan Institute, which I selected very, very, very carefully and with a lot of counsel. Mary Longacre contributed greatly to that, great lady. She usually listens in. She's at Sleater, I think, this week. She may not be listening.
Yeah.
There are 4 books that we have as part of this, and the first one's a very strange one. It's called What Color's Your Parachute? And it's actually a book about how to go through the process of hunting for a job, and of all the crazy places to start. But there is a lesson learned in that book about how to sell yourself and present yourself as a value add to a small business. That's exactly.
While you're talking, I'm tweeting. I'm not looking away from you. Let's make.
That's perfectly fine. So that's exactly what we have to do. We have to go into a small business environment, and we have to tell people how we can contribute value. So we extract those job applicant principles from the job seeker employer model to the would-be consultant and potential client model, and we've applied all of that, creating an effect here with air quotes, a pro advisor edition of that book. Okay, the next book that we covered, and this is a classic, but we created a pro advisor application of this book too. So that's the whole point of this, is classic books applied to the pro advisor community specific. That's the point of the instruction. How to win friends and influence people. And there's a book. It's an awesome one. And there's a version of it now called In the Digital Age. So how does that change the game? By Dale Carnegie and Associates. Now we finished those 2 already. And we're moving our way into a book, and I'm going to hold it up for you. The other ones I have on my iPad, so I can't hold them up. But this is a book by Les McKeon. I think it's in reverse here on the image. But Les McKeon wrote a book called The Synergist. Les McKeon was one of the instructors at QuickBooks Connect. I went to this guy's course, and I sat under his teaching for about a day, just a day with this guy. Absolutely changed the way I view business and organizational strength and health, the way I operate as a CEO. So we're going through this book next, and then the 4th book we're going to cover is the book, and it's a very, very strange title, and I need to caution people before I even say the title. Whatever you do, if you're listening to this show, do not Google the name of this book. Go to Amazon, go to the books category, and then search. The name of the book is called Getting Naked. Okay? Now, it's a very strange title, and it's a title that's designed to catch the eye, but the purpose of it is to communicate vulnerable consulting. The entire book is one narrative. It's a story. It's a parable, like a fable, right? And it tells the story of this consulting company that provides vulnerable, honest consulting in a world where that seldom exists, and how they're blowing the doors off their competitors. They're really contributing to small business success. So we're very excited to be kind of finishing out that one as icing on our cake. So now that one's written by Patrick Lencioni, but it's called Getting Naked. All right.
So interesting. So on the books, of course, I have at least probably 100 in my room that I've read, between Robert Kiyosaki's books, all of those kind of things. Of course, the Intuit book from when Scott Cook started Intuit, and I think that
that was a cool one. Yeah,
that's a good one. When I was first on the advisory council, I got that book, and I'm not lying, Joe. I stayed up, and I don't read. That's just a hint for you. I don't really read. It's not that I can't. I just don't want to. But I got that book, and when I got that book and it had his autograph in that book, I stayed up. I read at least 3/4 of that book the first night at council, which is why we're all like blood-eyed at the last day. But what I'm getting the most from our conversation at this moment, Joe, is your passion. And I find that as QuickBooks consultants, as accountants, as CPAs, as CEOs, I don't care. It does not matter. Like you said, whether you're a candy striper or you're the actual doctor taking the heart out and putting a new one back in again, it doesn't matter. What matters is the passion in which you do your procedures. So whatever your procedure is, whatever your piece is, it's the passion behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Exactly right.
It's really one of the messages that I feel like I've received over the last 6 months is, when people ask me, well, what do you really want to do? What is your passion? And so for me, as I think I've made it fairly clear, is the work that I do in relationship to the IRS work. So we get a client, we get a phone call from one of the attorneys who say, we got a person, 911, mobilize, which is what most contractors do, they mobilize. And they say, hey, Brolin, we need this person, we need someone on site tomorrow at 8 a.m. They have a week to get 10 years worth of tax returns done. And it's interesting where you have a passion behind really what the ultimate truth behind that is helping the people.
Yes.
The act of doing the work of putting together someone's books to compare it to a tax return, seriously. I mean, here's an adding machine here, just, whatever. But the ability, that passion, what I would say, of course, on a Veterans Day today, by the way, I want to thank you, Joe, for your service. So let's, we should add. Oh, okay. I apologize for maybe saying something I shouldn't have, but whatever. I should have.
No, it's fine. I don't care if people know I was in the Army. That's cool.
Honestly, that service in and of itself is something that we should all be thankful for on a daily basis and on a regular basis. And so for those people who are watching or are family members or whatever, it seems like you said earlier, cliche to say thank you so much for serving. But if I have the opportunity every day to shake the hand of a service person, doesn't matter what they did, as you've said, Joe, it doesn't matter if you're a candy striper or the doctor. If you are a part of something like that, there's an honor and a respect that everyone should have. Every single. I don't care if you're checking in paper or you're the person in charge on the front line. It doesn't matter. Every little piece matters, and I think that that's a really good point to what you were saying earlier, and a great comparison as we are in Veterans Day, and that's so important. But the passion that you have for the training and the pulling together of the systems and helping people figure out where their place is, because really that's what it is. Where is your place? Are you forward thinking to the future of what I call is save the click? Save the keystroke, save, of course, save the desktop, because I'm a desktop lover. But all of those things, I can't help but say that. But how do we help communicate that as you're trying to do and working with your initial group of people to find your passion? And it's so cliche to say that, but that is the most important thing, because everyone, I believe, can learn bookkeeping. I'll grab my 15-year-old right now and I can get her in here and I can teach her how to hit the keys and pick this and that and teach her the rules. But if she doesn't love it, she's not going to do it.
That's exactly right. And at one point in this opening course with Nan Institute, I said, generate a passion. Find that passion within you that desires to contribute to small business success. And if you cannot find that passion by the end of this course on December the 6th, I will ask two things of you. I will give you something and ask something of you. I will give you your money back for Nan Institute, and I will ask you to go find an occupation that fits your passion. Yes. Because there's just no, and I know that sounds a little, I was being a little bit hyperbolic there, right? But I was making a point that that everybody who's embraced the pro-advisor industry has within them some kernel of desire to contribute to small business success. Usually what gets in the way of that, Dawn, is the way we perceive ourselves. We think that, yes, small business success is important, I would love to, but my client will never see me that way, or I can never play that role, or I don't have the letters after my name that are required in order to play that role. And the letters are awesome, they're important. You worked your behind off to get the letters. They're huge. But if somebody works their way up through the knowledge and experience, works their way up into contributing to small business success, they can make a difference without the letters, right? A big difference.
Right.
And they can earn respect.
So
right?
I'm going to say one little thing about that, because that is definitely an important point. it's not necessarily about the letters that you've achieved, and not that, trust me, blood, sweat, tears, almost died from it, honestly. But what's more important than that is not just passing a test, because for me, that was a miracle from God. If you've never seen one, you've seen one now. But so that's the CPA can't pass again. So, and that's the truth. That stuff's not made up. That's for real. But what I would say more importantly is not necessarily that point in time. So I would call passing a test like a balance sheet. It's an accumulation of things that have happened over a period of time, but it is still a moment in time. Right? So this is like kind of really weird. It's funny because you and I are talking and no one else is listening, which is awesome, Joe. It's just you and me. So a profit and loss, though, is over a period of time. And it continues, just like a balance sheet, but it continues, but it's for a specific period of time. And I find that the most important thing for anyone, whether you're a pro advisor, with or without an accounting degree, with or without a CPA, with or without whatever the letters are, if you don't have continuing education in your practice or in your life, you're missing the whole thing. If you are not continuing to grow, you're standing still, you might as well just jump yourself right into the hole and bury yourself. Because if you're not learning, you're not growing and getting better, and that moves along with the technology, then what's the point? Because you can be a CPA and you could be a CPA for 50 years. That doesn't mean you know what's going on today.
That's exactly right.
And that's really important because you were saying, and that was one of the points I think that you've made. You made 90 of them, in my opinion, but this one specifically, you are absolutely correct. It doesn't matter what is behind your name, but it's a fact of you better be continuing your education because things change on a moment-by-moment basis.
That's exactly right, and steer a lot of those educational energies toward how to not only grow my own practice, which is I think the pitfall a lot of these coaching communities fall into is they just focus on how to run the person's practice efficiently. Now, NAN Institute's going to include that, but we came out of the gate swinging at the biggest problem. How do we help our clients to be successful, first and foremost, and then how do we turn those guns back on ourselves and say, okay, how are we going to be successful? I list in the very first session of NAN Institute, I bullet out the obstacles to why we don't fulfill our vision. And these are the obstacles, and they're listed straight out in the mission appendix of the Golden Parachute book. These are the things that get in our way: the mundane, the drudgery of every single day and the way it wears you down and the way it's hard to see past the drudgery to do anything proactive, the noisy, the distracting, and noise abounds in our world, from social media to the television to the family noise that's not bad, it's just noise, to, the noise of our employees, the noise of our fellow workers, the noise of client problems that are reactionary in nature, just, the busy, always being under the gun, always being under pressure, overcommitted constantly, most of the time engaged. And the reason our busyness is because we're engaged in things that we should have shed off. We have clients that we should have let go of. We have barnacles on the bottom of our boat, which is an analogy I use a lot of the times, little things that grow on the bottom of the boat and slow your boat down. We don't scrape them off. And it creates a busyness which basically shuts down any ability to do anything proactive. The painful, the hurts of the past, we carry those around like baggage in the present, and they affect either our sense of determination or hopefulness about the future, or they affect the way we perceive ourselves, or both. Then there's the egotistical, and this one sounds strange because typically underconfidence, lack of confidence, is the pro advisor's biggest hang-up, right? But the egotistical can plague you as well. And because you think you know it all, you think there's nothing to learn, and you go and you actually create more problems because you're not listening to what the client says, you're not trying to solve the actual problem, you're going in with all the answers and no questions. All right, the uncertain. And people who fear uncertainty are the ones that cling to normalcy. They cling to stability. They cling to the things they can control and the things that they can predict. And guys, there's a reason we chose the accounting profession, because it's predictable, it's controllable. We can make the balance sheet balance. In our little universe, we are king and queen, right? And we can manage that. But it's messy to go out and venture into a new task. You have to embrace the uncertain. And you have to know that things may not work right, and that failure is part of success. And then there's the efficient. I know this really sounds strange, but the reason we don't achieve mission is because the achievement of mission slows us down. The productivity of today suffers in order to achieve the higher goal of tomorrow because we have to make that investment. Dawn, I would venture to say that while you were studying for your CPA exam and taking it, you were inefficient as an accounting professional. You had to embrace inefficiency in order to propel yourself forward into a greater vocation.
That's right.
We can overcome those bullets. We can embrace a different calling, a higher calling, a mission.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we actually went to the Home Depot when I was studying. My kids were only 6 and 7, I think, maybe 7 and 8, and we bought a countertop, and we secured it to the wall in the bedroom. So that's helpful for the marriage. But we secured that to the wall in the bedroom because we have a second floor where the kids were sleeping. So I would put them to bed, and they knew I was upstairs. And so that, you know, what you do is you just make sacrifices and you do whatever it takes. It's not CPA exam. It's not whatever. You know what? If you feel like you want to continue your education and you want credentials and you don't have an accounting degree, go get your certification in bookkeeping. Go and get your advanced certification. Join the NAN Institute. Do the things that it takes to be able to, because, you know, you do, in some cases, for some clients, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent, they want to know that you are continuing and going after the education that you need as the professional, as the advisor, as the trusted. Trust is a huge word. It is
trust is a very loaded word because you cannot do anything positive in anybody's life, whether it's a friend, a family member, a spouse, if it's a client.
That's
trust
right.
is the basis of all influence and change.
Yes, absolutely. And that word is extremely heavy. So we want to make sure, you know, as practitioners, as consultants, whatever we're doing, that we're doing, of course, the famous words of due diligence. And what does that mean? Does that mean, you know, making sure that the balance sheet matches the P&L, and when it doesn't balance, do we know how to fix it? I mean, that's technical work. But
Right.
Are we doing our due diligence as the professional, as the trusted person that in so many ways these people are relying on us for their life? If you don't feel like your clients are relying on you, again, whether you're doing the accounting, the consulting, the implementation, the software recommendations, it doesn't matter. If you don't feel like those people are relying on you for their livelihood and their business employees and whatever, then you are in the wrong business. And that's for real. I mean, if you don't think a doctor who opens up a heart is as serious as somebody who's able to change the financial condition of not just that person but their family, then you've missed it all. That's true. You know, it's all not there. But I love the book conversation. And somebody had tweeted out, Robin Talbot, which, hello, Robin, it's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, of course. And you asked about the book that I couldn't put down, and here it is. It's even bent, which is proof.
Oh, yeah.
I read it. That the bending, it's not.
Is your sign?
It's a sign. Like this, you can't just like flip through it like that and have it open, you know, like in one shot.
Right.
You know, of course, Catch Me If You Can, which I've watched 80 million times, which, of course, at your conference, he was not speaking, you know, he said there were obviously some things in the movie that weren't accurate, but The Art of the Steal. And I read this book, and I guess I'm not great at being a fugitive in most ways of the law. In a handful of ways, maybe I am, but in this particular case, I'm not. But there was an interesting example in this book, The Art of the Steal, and I'm not selling Frank's book, and I've only talked to him once on the phone, and he knows I'm a stalker, and it's okay. Listen, you know, that's what we do. But he had a great example of a simple fraud through the Postal Service where if he wanted something to get to someone, he would put the return address to where he wanted the letter to go in the upper left corner and his address in the primary area, and it would get to that person. Never even had to put a stamp on the envelope. Now, that's something I would never think of. But you know, I was trying to think like a criminal. I'm working on it. I'm not that good at it. But I can tell you what's interesting about reading that part of the book. was that I need to always be thinking one step ahead of my client. So I couldn't think one step ahead on what was going to come next in the next sentence that Frank had to say. Like, it all just blew me away. And I always try to be one step ahead of the client and think of that next sentence that's going to happen for them. And I think that's one of the things that makes a really good consultant. And I would like you to comment on that, and then I'm going to go get something in my supply closet, a book. I know you're amazed by the fact that I have books in my office. But I have a book that is going to make another point that you talked about in a second. But I want you to talk to me about that, staying one step ahead.
Well, and I'll tell you the best way to stay one step ahead as you go get your book is to know your client. I mean, you can't anticipate what the client's going to do if you're not a listener. So we talk a lot in this first course of Man Institute about communication skills, and you would think that everybody, in our occupation would have already developed intense communication skills, but communication is an art form that must be learned and continually sharpened, okay? So, for example, let's say that you've got a situation that needs to be calmed down with a fellow employee, with somebody that works for you, a contractor, a client. I wish that I'd always responded to every single heated situation like I'm going to describe to you, but this is an example of what we do to listen to clients, what we do to communicate well with clients, and what we do to keep the conversation others focused, which is what you're talking about with anticipating what the client's going to do next. You got to be focused on them, not on your own agenda. So if the client is coming at it from a very heated perspective, the first thing you do is you listen and listen and listen, and no matter what they say, no matter how much they scream or foam at the mouth like Cujo or throw out the insults like crazy, whatever they do, you listen, you document. They might rant and rave, and they're all over the place for the 10 minutes, right? But in those 10 minutes, they're going to say 3 or 4 bullets that you'll be able to pick out of the air from all of the conversation. You'll be able to get them into a bulleted form. When they finally wear themselves out with the ranting and raving, what you say is, okay, first I can see that you're very, very upset, and I think I now understand why. If I'm hearing you correctly, you're telling me that you're upset because, and then you summarize back to them in 30 seconds what it took 10 minutes for them to get to. Not in a condescending way, not like you're Freud analyzing them, okay? Just spit it back. And then you say to them, then you ask a question, which is the next step. So you listen, you write, you reiterate, summarize, and you ask. Does that summarize the way you feel? Did I get that right? Now, if they say no, you perfect the statement, echo back until you get a yes. You understand how I feel. Then the very next words out of your mouth, even if they're totally in the wrong, you're totally in the right, is, I am so sorry that I made you feel that way.
Right.
Because it may be completely their fault they feel that way. It may be completely their fault that their interaction with me bounced off of them and hit back and made them mad. But regardless of whose fault it was, if they threw the ball against themselves and hit themselves back in the head, if it ricocheted back or whatever, I made them feel that way because I'm standing in the room. Right. I was involved in the situation. So I'm so sorry that I made you feel that way. What I would like to do is I would like to turn this thing to where we can find a resolution, where we can solve the problem together. And then you've earned the right, through empathy, listening, and echoing back, you've earned the right to say back to the client or whoever you're dealing with, this works fantastic for a spouse, you've earned the right to say back, I believe this is the answer to the problem, let's get there together, okay? And then I'll give you another one that's really good communication skill. This one I had deployed, this isn't from the books, I got this from a marriage counselor in premarital counseling, and I'm telling you what, it has made the biggest difference ever in our marriage. Okay, before it ever started. Anytime there's conflict, if there's going to be a confrontation or if there's an argument, don't start with the word you, start with the word I, and then this is the formula. It's a magic formula. I feel blank, and in the blank, insert a feeling word. Okay, you could actually Google feeling wheel, like the wheel of a car. It'll give you about 100 different feelings. I feel blank because you blank. Now, if you're still saying, you're still addressing and confronting what the person did, but you start with how you feel, you start with emotion, then you say, because you did this. And there's a big difference between the accusation that's inherent in, you're a bad person. You may not say it, but you're a bad person because you did blah, blah, blah. That's how we read it if we start with our action, with the other person's action. But if you start with how you feel, then you turn to their action, it's amazing how that's never perceived, because it isn't an accusation of how horrible the person is. It focuses all of the judgment on the circumstance and the behavior, not on the person. And you're going to find all the defensiveness melts away,
Right.
and they're going to have a measured response back, and often it'll be, I'm sorry I made you feel that way, with a simple little change in communication skills. So the takeaway from all of that, because you said, how can I predict what my client's up to? We listen to the client, find out what they're passionate about, find out where they need to go, hear them, hear them, hear them. And I'll say one last thing about communication, because it's just too important to not say it. This is where my CPA lives it out. I actually had an emotional moment in front of the Ohio Society of CPAs, and that's about the most traditional group of CPAs you'll ever see in your life. And I just about cried in front of them, but I broke them out. I actually had a woman crying. All right, and cause, that's a stiff audience. I know, but it was real. I had a real moment. This was my moment. I stood up in front of them and I said, you have the potential to change people's lives. I said, my organization 6 months ago was recognized by Intuit as their preferred event management and training partner for accounting professionals on the planet. You saw the press release, Dawn. You said how happy you were for us.
Absolutely.
And this is where I broke down, because it's the truth. I could never have achieved that goal without my CPA. Mm-hmm. Not because he kept me compliant, not because he was a good historian, but because he took me to breakfast after breakfast after breakfast, lunch after lunch after lunch after lunch. Yes, he billed me, but I didn't care. That wasn't the point. He took me to these things, and he started all of those conversations with, how are you doing? And he would never take fine for an answer.
Right.
He dealt with me as an individual who he understood, if he didn't keep me whole as an individual, as a mentor to me, that he wouldn't have a whole CEO, which means he wouldn't have a whole business, which having a whole client, right? And then he would go from the individual to the coaching of how he can make help me make my business better. Sometimes he'd pull in the financial, many times he will. That was the context of the conversation. But there were so many times we wouldn't even talk about the books.
Right.
We wouldn't even talk about financial planning. He was just sharing with me, because he's 20 years my senior, the experience of his own life and the wisdom of his own life. And the 20% of it, I chose not to apply, because he's human. He doesn't see everything. I have to make my own decisions. But 80% of it is solid advice. Right. And I think that's the role that we're missing in our clients' lives. We don't understand the potential we have to contribute to their success and change their lives forever. And he gets it. And he hasn't even been through NAN Institute. But he gets it, right?
Well, I've met him, so I know he's...
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Just saying. Like,
yeah.
I've met him. He's a very, very nice man. And, your point is very well taken. And I think sometimes we as trusted advisors, as we're working with clients, unfortunately there are times when the client just isn't ready for that. Now, you happen to be ready for that at the time or during the times in which he was taking you to breakfast and doing those things with you and saying, hey, what's going on? I had a conversation with one of my clients this morning. I hadn't talked to her for maybe 20 days, which was way too long. And we, I really try to stay in touch with them. And I wanted to know how she was. I'm like, before we start with the accounting stuff, I want to know how you are. I know you've gone to Haiti. I know you've done this. I know you've done that.
That's key. You know what's going on in her life, so you can ask specifically about what's going on in her life. That's huge.
That's right. And because I genuinely care about them, and I think that obviously you got to care about people. If you don't, you can't work with animals. Like my 15-year-old, she doesn't care about people. So accounting is not her thing, or therapy, or any of that kind of stuff. She needs to go and live in a zoo with a bunch of monkeys that don't actually ask any questions and just let her pet them. So, we all have to know where we stand.
Right.
So I love your point about that, because I think that there are times when we're trying to fire hose people who are not ready for it. And so I went over to the supply closet And I pulled out this book. And once again, I'm not getting paid for this, or it's not for any other reason than I read this book. I had made my husband read it because I wanted to be accountable to somebody who would make me actually follow what the book said. And this is the book, The Pumpkin Plan. And
I have never heard of it.
Oh my goodness, Joseph, you don't, I'm going to send one to you. I'm going to mail
Who wrote it?
Tomorrow. It's Mike McAllowitz. He was on the show. He was at QB Connect. Mike McAllowitz wrote this book. And I met Mike through an MSNBC thing, and I met him, and he was like, oh, I have a book for you before I left. Of course, I was hugging him, and, you know, we were holding hands, and we were engaged. It's fine. My husband doesn't care. And I loved him because of who he was. He was just a great, fun person. And he's like, you should read this book. And I'm like, dude, I don't read books, but I'll take it. You know, you're very nice, and I don't want to insult you, and it's cool. But exactly what you talked about your clients who are barnacles earlier. This Pumpkin Plan book talks about getting rid of those barnacles. Pumpkin Plan, pumpkin patching, and it's not because you want to get rid of your clients, because you don't. I read my client list on a weekly basis, and I look at it and I go, oh my goodness, I don't make a lot of money from these people, and half the time I talk to them, I know they're not listening, but I really care about them. I've had clients where I've said, listen, here's the deal. One individual's name was David. I said, David, here's the deal, buddy. We've been together since 1999, and here's the deal. I am not providing you with a benefit. You are interested in doing the things you're doing, and what you're doing is fixing cars, and you're really good at it. You don't want to meet with me. You think you want to meet with me, but you don't. Because when we talk and I ask you to do things, you know, follow-up situations, for the last 12 years, you've not done one of them.
Yep. There you go.
So there's a point where you come, it's not because you don't love them or you care about them or you want to see them succeed, but it may be 1 or 10 or 20 clients that are holding you back. And those are the barnacles that some of us don't want to admit. And this book, I read this book and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can think of 30, and then I look at the list and I think about their kids and I go, I can't do that to them. And really, ultimately, they're wasting their money on me when they could just be doing what they love, which is fixing cars. So,
it's true.
This book has to be in your program, so just put it in there, because honestly, this book made a lot of changes for me, and this book helped me find my passion. And it may take 50, it may take 30, it might take 5 books, I don't know. But there's going to be something that triggers a passion behind what you're doing and the ability for you to break free from what's holding you. And I'm doing this like I'm pretending there's things attached to my body. You know, break free of whatever's holding you back. And sometimes it's a book, and sometimes it's just a realization that it's time for you to move on and get better. And your clients will thank you for it, and your former clients will definitely thank you for it if they get their brain wrapped around the truth.
True. Absolutely true.
Now, there was something else that we had been texting about. We talked about the NAN Institute, and there was something about this winter that's coming up that we wanted to talk about.
Yes, there's another Intuit virtual conference coming up this winter because of the success of the last 2, which have always been in the fall of 13 and fall of 14. Intuit decided that they would do another one here in the winter. So it's going to be December 9, 10, and 11. The website is QuickBooks VCon, V as in Victor, or V as in virtual, QuickBooksVCon.com. You can read all about it. The tracks will be published and up there on the website very soon. We have all the tracks finalized. So just to tell you what's going on with it, there's going to be a two-pronged strategy around this. One is QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Online Advanced certification exam preparation. Now, this is the only time you're going to get live advanced certification exam preparation in the landscape. Now, I'm not saying they might not turn around and do it in January. There's nothing planned right now for live QBO advanced cert training, nothing on the horizon that's planned yet between VCon and Scaling New Heights in June. They might insert something, but just be safe and get it. It's going to be taught by one of the developers of the curriculum. We're still in the final selection process of which, and it's going to be interactive in nature. You'll be able to engage with the instructor. You'll be able to ask questions that affect the direction the instructor goes. That's the difference from that in a self-study environment. There'll be at least 10, maybe a dozen people from Intuit answering questions in the background, supporting the hundreds of attendees going through both QBO Cert and QBO Advanced Cert during the 3-day VCon. Now, there are other tracks as well. If you already have both those certs, or if you're certs, there's going to be a track on Wednesday of the virtual conference that's going to have all year-end focus. So how do you work with your clients on QuickBooks Desktop at the end of the year? How do you work with your clients on QuickBooks Online at the end of the year? And what are all the strategies there for efficiency and effectiveness, getting that tax return out? How do you quickly troubleshoot the data to get the tax return out? And then we're going to have keynote presentations. We're still nailing down the thought leaders, but we're going to have Intuit-worthy, they bring in the big hitters, thought leader keynotes on either two 30-minute ones or one 60-minute one on that Wednesday.
Right.
Now, on Thursday, there is going to be an expo of some of the leading QuickBooks integrated apps. Each app developer, TechCrunch style, is going to get 15 minutes and no more than 15 minutes to show you the essentials of their product. Now, this is an optional track, but for people who are interested in the third-party solutions, it's an awesome track. And they can go through, and in the course of 6 one-hour sessions, they can gain the essential information they need on 18 different applications that integrate with QuickBooks. Now, all that's about empowerment, because if I know those 18 products and what they're capable of doing, when I meet a client need that I need to meet, all right, when I encounter a client need I need to meet, I'll have a solution teed up that I know will take care of that for my client, pre-vetted by Intuit, Joe Woodard, or we wouldn't let him in, and discovered by me over that 15-minute segment. So it's a fantastic, all still CPE worthy, so it's a fantastic use of your CP hour. QBO Cert, QBO Advanced Cert, year-end strategies, thought leader keynotes, third-party apps, all packed into 3 days. It's going to be an incredible virtual experience.
Awesome. So that's another thing that we had talked about earlier was the, again, continuing education of making sure you're staying on top of what's happening, staying in the forefront of the thought leadership of what's happening in this industry. I can't help but divert to the application for which I am wearing all of the goods. I can't help it, Joseph. It's not my fault. It's who I am. I'll tell you what. So today there was an announcement by CPA Practice Advisor of the top 25 most influential, powerful accounting women thing, right? So I say that obviously respectfully, and there was a great list of people on that list, and I could round them off. I want to congratulate, of course, my co-host Stacy Kildall for obtaining that honor, and Edie Osborne, and Jeannie Whitehouse, who, if you've never met Jeannie Whitehouse, is one of the funniest people you'll ever meet in your life. She and I are planning on going to Atlanta for the accounting comedian round-off. When
is that going to be?
Well, we've been texting today, and we're trying to figure out when it is, but it's in Atlanta. And
All right, will you call me?
I will call you. It's an accounting comedian competition.
Got it.
Of course, and Jeannie is hilarious. I met her for the first 10 minutes. I was like, where have you been all of my life? So that was fantastic. But so I was selected also for the top 25, but that's not the point. The point is that I was
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you for that. I was unable to make it because I went on a 10-day vacation with my family. I actually shut my phone off for 4.5 days, which I've never done in my whole life. And it was absolutely amazing. But I could not make it out to Vegas on time to go out to the conference. And so I asked T-Sheets if they would accept my award on my behalf. And so Kelsey Metal did that for me today, which I very, very much respect and appreciate. And I can't say enough about that company. From an application perspective, I don't even really think of T-Sheets personally as an app because I feel like they're part of my family, and I'm saying that from the truth and the bottom of my heart. Ask them, because I found out they were giving out pillowcases, and I'm ready to cut people because I'm using regular pillowcases right now in my house. I don't have a T-Sheets pillowcase. Stacy Byrne put it on Facebook, and I went nuts. But the people, as we're talking about, Joe, the trust, the advisorship, And what Intuit has pulled together from what I would consider their vetting process of professionals, their vetting process of trusted applications and trusted people who are involved in their ecosystem. And there are applications like T-Sheets, and there are applications like Tally and Concur, and of course Unidata for hosting that works for me, and they're thankfully, very thankfully, supporters of the show. And Avalara sales tax, like who wants to do that? Like you were saying,
forget that. Let Avalara do it.
Somebody asked me, and I'm like, oh no, let me give you a link. I don't even, I used to, like, well, I won't say what I said in the class at QB Connect, which hopefully wasn't on any of the surveys, but there was probably an inappropriate statement. But I used to do anything for money. Let me put it to you that way, Joseph. So I don't do that anymore. When I know I'm at my limit and it's not a place that I want to be, I push it off to the experts and the trusted advisors that Intuit has already vetted on my behalf, and I didn't even have to pay them. Like, what's better than that? I did not even have to pay them to vet these applications. And so we love that Intuit trusts those applications. We, as advisors in this community, love that they have entrusted in you, Joe, the ability for the training and the forward thinking, as you mentioned, with Greg LaFollette and all of those guys, and Doug Sleater, and the people who are really paving the pathway to information that I don't want to gather, because I don't want to do that. What I want to
pull it all together and yep.
Exactly. A perfect package with a combination of professional people, regardless of their qualifications or whatever. And I loved what you said about sometimes it's a school of hard knocks. And I got to tell you, I have a 4-year degree, a master's degree, a CPA, and you know what? I get my butt kicked every day. Because they don't teach you what you need to know in those darn books. They teach you enough of the foundation, but they don't teach you real life. And so I really, really do appreciate all of those points that you've made, Joe. And, you and I love having conversations with you. And I just find I get all of these nuggets pulled together, and I get all fired up. And your passion in the beginning of this show, Joe.
I just came off of a 2-hour session with NAN Institute, so I came off fired up. Yeah. And I'm fired up not just because the information is really, really fun to share. I'm fired up because the goal that we're accomplishing together is so unbelievably powerful. And I think the show run time is an hour, right?
Yep. Yeah, but I want you to wrap this up, Joseph. You wrap it.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. But I'm going to be Woody asking me to wrap it up. All right, this is my best Woody impression, okay?
Awesome.
So we're done now with the. Okay, so we're going to take it to Joe, and he's going to close us out. So many thanks to our sponsors. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Okay, here we go. You ready? That was Woody. That's not great, but okay. All right, so.
Like to look around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look around. Okay, so. All right, Woody, if you're watching, I love you. Okay, I call him the mayor of Intuit, by the way. I introduced him. I got the chance to introduce him at QuickBooks Connect. I called him Mr. Mayor, the mayor of Intuit. All right, so this is the way I want to close out. I want to close out by coming back to the vision statement for Woodard, because the vision statement for Woodard is something that I think is contagious for the Pro Advisor community. To radically and positively impact the way small business operates. Now, we have to add through the advisors who support small business, because that's our role. You can just truncate it before you get to that point. And Pro Advisors, if you don't have your own vision statement, create one. If you just like mine, take it. I don't care. I'd love for it to be contagious. To radically and positively impact the way small businesses operate. Okay? If that gets you out of bed in the morning, stay a Pro Advisor. And if it doesn't, again, find something that gets you out of bed in the morning. But I'll leave you with that.
And I love that, Joe, as we all should. Life happens quickly, and we should all be just, do something that we love. And that's what I try to teach my kids every day. And I know you teach that beautiful girl with the hair that I'm going to cut off, because she's got some beautiful hair, your daughter does. And again, I want to thank very seriously the veterans of this country who have made our ability to have business and be in business possible. And that's very, very serious. And I want to if I could shake every one of your hands, I would do it. And I want to thank you. But this has been a great show, Joseph. I appreciate your time. Thank you for your patience in Dawn Brolin's inability to launch a show, which I've only done like 4 times. I still suck at it. But I'm passionate about whatever I'm passionate about. And I love you. And we'll talk soon, Joe. And I thank you so much. Wendy, I love you because I know you're listening.
Always great to be here, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
And when you're in the water, and anytime you need to know if someone's okay, just know that you got to do this. That means okay. Heads up. Love you, Joe. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Right.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
All
Okay,
right.
bye.
Throw away thumb drives, no attachments. Get the files anywhere when you're permitted access. What's the matter? Frustrated with the hassle? Jump up in the cloud and join us in the castle.
High up in the clouds and we're not